Even as our government in Washington ignores pressing environmental issues like climate change, people of faith are being called to defend God's creation. That commitment was on display at the Fourth Annual Great Vespers for the Protection of the Environment, held in August at St. Peter and Paul Greek Orthodox Church in Glenview. For more on the ecumenical commitment to environmental justice, we welcome Father Panagiotis Bosnos, pastor of St. Peter's and Paul Greek Orthodox Church. We also welcome Sister Dawn Notwer, a Franciscan sister, professor of Catholic Theological Ethics at Catholic Theological Union, who spoke at the Vespers. And we welcome Michael Tarian, an oblate of St. Benedict and an associate member of the Catholic Association of Diocesan Ecumenical and Interreligious Officers. That's a mouthful. I welcome you all to Different Drummers. Thank you so much for being here today and for talking to us about this really important issue. What historic traditions are there in the Church for this call to environmental justice? Let's start with you, Father.
Well, we find a call to the environmental protection and stewardship in the very beginning of the book of Genesis, when God gives the command to mankind to go forth and multiply and have dominion over the earth. That dominion, we understand as the Orthodox Church, is really lordship. You know, to care for creation as God cares for mankind and all of creation, that He endued mankind with the same responsibilities for creation that He has in taking care of it, seeing that it grows and flourishes, and providing that same protection that He has given to all of creation as the act of our loving God.
Sister Dawn, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I would simply affirm what Father has said, and then maybe just build on it a bit in the sense that throughout the whole tradition of the Church, why there have been many occasions where through preaching, through teaching, why we've shown just the very value of the kinds of things that God has created in relation to humankind, and certainly the Scriptures, the Psalms, Second Isaiah, the whole Exodus experience where we have the people, very much in tune and very close to the land all the way through the Hebrew Scriptures, and then looking at what Jesus did in terms of His life and ministry. He was often out in the wilderness or in nature somewhere and used any number of examples to teach us about the goodness of God's creation. And I think, also in the Franciscan tradition, why we also look very much to the fact that we have connections to some of the earliest teachers of our tradition. For example, St. Augustine, who said, that the creation really is the second book of God's revelation to us, and that we really, if we look close enough to anything in the natural world, there's going to be some evidence of God. Mm-hmm. And the comparison is often made between an artist who creates a sculpture or a painting or something like that, and it's through looking at that painting or that sculpture that you're going to see something of the artist. So it's all of that and mm-hmm. more, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Michael, why is this an important issue to you? Mm-hmm.
Well, because creation is the context in which we live. We are a part of creation. We are a part of nature. We're not separate from it. And I think the challenge that we have in today's world is through technology and through a lot of the current thinking that human beings have separated ourselves from nature. And in that, we see it as dominion, as being able to have control over everything, and that it's here for our purpose. And it's not. We are not God. It is God's creation. And so when we talk about having dominion, it means to care, protect, and preserve creation. And if we care about not just human beings today, but in 7 generations to come, to our grandchildren, then we need to care about the creation that sustains all of life. And so that's why it's important. And it's all to the glory of God. It's how do we wake up in the morning and go, thank God, how do we have gratitude for it? Mm-hmm. And in that conversion, then we can begin to say, how do I behave in a way that's loving and caring for my neighbor around me, but also the planet as our neighbor as well.
Let's talk a little bit about how contemporary leaders in both the Orthodox and the Catholic churches are addressing this crisis.
Well, In 1989, Ecumenical Patriarch Demetrius I, he declared September 1st, which is the beginning of the Orthodox Church ecclesiastical New Year. He declared that as the beginning of the new year and also a day of prayer for the care of creation. So the Orthodox Church has taken from its leadership a care for creation all the way dating back to 1989, and then the current Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew has taken what he received from Demetrius I and exploded it onto a global scale.
Can you talk a little bit about him and tell us more about him? He's called the Green Patriarch.
Yes, he was the Green Patriarch
Why?
before it became cool to be green. I was blessed to be with him this summer for an environmental symposium in Greece, a 5-day symposium where he gathered, using his influence on the world stage, religious leaders, economists, journalists, policymakers, and scientists for a 5-day symposium to talk about not only climate change, but also food and wealth distribution and how all of these are interrelated endeavors. And so this most recent symposium, I believe, is the 9th that he's done in his tenure, which is over 25 years, really being a spokesperson for the care of creation.
That is very surprising that it goes all the way back to 1989. So we're kind of slow at getting to it.
Yeah, slowly taking what our leaders have told us, this is important, and incorporating that into our daily life. It's taken, now almost 20 years for that to become a reality, but by the grace of God, 20 years in the history of creation is just a blip, and now we are really taking these environmental measures and making them a hallmark of our ministry, not just in our parishes, but to the wider community in the world at large.
So what are the critical issues, and how is the church addressing them?
Well, one of the critical issues is water use and water management. We constantly use more water every year than we have in the past. There are parts of the world where water is becoming very, very scarce. And this water usage has been deemed a right of humanity by the Ecumenical Patriarch, that everybody should have access to drinkable, potable water, and that life is not possible without that. That's one of the major issues. The other is obviously climate change and global warming and many other things to that. I would turn over to Michael here. He's
right.
more
it's
attuned
the
to that.
interesting piece with the water. As the atmosphere warms, our ice caps and our glaciers are melting. And if you just look at the Himalaya plateau, the Tibetan plateau, that water feeds over 1.7 billion people.
Wow.
And so when all of that water, all that ice melts and that water is gone, where do those people go? As you can see, that my brother in Christ here from the Eastern Orthodox Church, and we're here with the Roman Catholic Church. So we're doing this in solidarity,
Absolutely.
not just between our two churches, but with all Christendom and the other religions in the world.
So what's happening here locally in the Chicago area to promote environmental justice?
Well, I'll just start with our parish, and how actually I met Michael was through the environmental vespers that we spoke about at the beginning of this broadcast. We, as a parish, decided that we wanted to start. And you asked earlier, is this a spiritual or is this a practical issue? And I want to say it's both, because you can't really divorce the two. There's nothing that we do as spiritual beings that doesn't have a practical application or isn't lived. If it's not lived, then it's not truly spiritually, it's not truly a part of us. So when we decided, we want to do something about the environment and ministering to our people to educate them and to impact the wider world, we said let's start with prayer. So we celebrated this service, which was composed in 1990 by Ecumenical Patriarch Demetrius at the time, and we started with that. And because the first year that we did that was right a few weeks, actually, I believe maybe a month or so after Pope Francis issued Laudato Si, I asked one of our parishioners who works in the environmental field to read the encyclical and give a presentation about the Orthodox impact on it, there is a large Orthodox impact on the encyclical. And because we were doing something that was touching on the Catholic faith and the Orthodox, kind of harmony on the same issue, many of our Catholic brothers and sisters from the area just naturally came to our parish. That event, that prayer, led to my parish of Saints Peter and Paul, and OLPH, Our Lady of Perpetual Help in Glenview, joining together our environmental ministries, which we had both just started, and applying as a joint group for a grant the Cook County was offering for solar panels and solar development and community solar. So because we started with prayer and we're open to working with others who have a shared view of creation and our responsibility, we were then able to take the spiritual side of prayer and put it into real action by applying together in an ecumenical way for this grant, and to pursue what would it look like for both of our parishes to pursue solar energy and to reduce our energy costs. And that's just led to a whole host of other environmental initiatives that I can only speak about my parish that we've taken as a result. We have a community garden at a garden across the street from us. We're blessed to be right across the street from Wagner Farm, which is an old working museum and farm. So we bring our children, our families, they sign up, they get their hands dirty, they dig and they plant, and then by the grace of God, we take that and what grows and we offer it to the community, to the food bank.
There's real concrete solutions that people are taking to mitigate climate change, and one is advocacy. And right now, the current EPA is putting forth a proposal to reduce the standards of carbon emissions or carbon dioxide that could go into the atmosphere. And carbon dioxide putting into the atmosphere, that's what creates climate change. And so there's one day that they're going to have a public hearing in the United States, and it's on October 1st, and it's in Chicago at the Metcalf Center. And so something that's important is for people to share with their congressmen that please do not roll back the clean energy plan that's put in place in order to reduce carbon emissions.
So what do you say to the people who deny that there's climate change happening in the world?
I think it's important to begin to ask why the person is saying that. On what basis? And what is their life experience that gets them to say that? I think that really helps. And then to simply share, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Have you seen this kind of situation? And I personally have some experiences because sisters in my community have worked in Appalachia for about 40 years. And there are places in Appalachia, for example, where I simply know that, for example, with mountaintop removal and variety of other things, the whole ecosystem is totally destroyed. And that when you take enough of those kinds of things, plants, animals, and things that are the natural places to absorb the carbon, to absorb the heat and so on in different ways, if you take that off the surface of the earth, you're going to have something pretty drastic happening. And the reality is that because of mountaintop removal alone in Appalachia, from the International Space Station, you can see a big gap in the whole beautiful Appalachian mountain ecosystem that is a moonscape, quite literally a moonscape.
Well, our thanks to you all for being here on Different Drummers today and talking about this very important issue. I'm Jan Engmeyer for Different Drummers and the Greater Chicago Broadcast Ministries. Keep the faith.